If you saw my last video, you saw we got a whole bunch of wiring and other things done on patches here, but now we're missing the engine. So that engine that we kind of put together from parts, it was sounding pretty good, but it's got a very little tick in it and I don't want to ruin it. So I decided to pull it out before it got any worse and put in another one. So the plan is to use this F-head. It's pretty clean. I bought it as a running engine. It has been sitting for a while, but it has ran recently, probably in the last 6 months at least. But it's all together, and like I said, I heard it run when I bought it, and it sounded pretty decent. So we are going to put this engine into the slant nose. This is really about the biggest challenge that I see right now with this engine, is somebody has put all kinds of different bolts into the crank. So that is going to mean taking the oil pan off and pulling that rear main so I can put the new bolts in. So that's going to be first thing we do. Definitely not brand new oil. So I don't see anything too shiny in that oil, but glad we're changing it. We'll let that drip dry and then we'll get this pan off. If you notice, this pan does not have a skid plate, so I'm gonna go ahead and replace it with one that does. Time to get the oil pan off. So we'll just see if we can. There we go. So a little bit of gunk in the bottom, but nothing too horrible. Got the old gasket off, and I did notice that my oil pickup tube or the screen had a little bit of damage, and now it's time to give everything underneath a quick inspection. Okay, just doing a quick little inspection. Everything seems to be pretty good. I don't see anything that stands out as bad. So popping the main cap, what I like to do is just take 2 of the oil pan bolts, put them back in, and then take a pry bar with a good long end, give it a little tap, do it on both sides. So put it over here, do the same thing. And if you look closely, you can see I already got that moving. So I can't do it holding on to you guys. So let me get this off. Okay, so I think I got it. Huh? I think I'm real close. All right, let me give it a little more pull. All right, might have it this time. I keep being hopeful. I don't want to drop this on the ground. Here we go. There we go. She's out. Everything looks good. We'll wipe that down, put a little fresh oil on it, and we'll get these changed and then slide everything back together. Got a complete set in. Here's our 2 dowel pins, and there's 4 original bolts and nuts. So we're all back to factory now. Let's go ahead. We can take a quick look at that. There's our bearing, not too bad. So we're gonna oil that up good, put it back on, torque that baby down, and get the oil pan back on. Also grabbed a new pickup tube that wasn't smashed like the other one. And all I had to do was completely gut pile this seized up old F-head to get those parts. Okay, we got 70 foot-pounds on our rear main, and everything is still spinning good. If this thing doesn't leak out of the rear main, I'll be shocked. So we're gonna stick a new gasket on our pickup tube, new gasket on our oil pan, and here's our oil pan that we're gonna be using with the skid plate, so that one's nice and clean. Went ahead and cleaned up, for the most part, all my bolts. I just need to spray them down with a little parts cleaner to get the last little bit of grease out of them. Gasket's laying on the pan nice, let's put it on. Sorry about my fan. It's sitting on its oil pan. The next thing we wanna make sure we get put on is our spacer before we put the flywheel on. So we can just hang it just like that for now. Flywheel is on. Bolts are torqued to 40 foot-pounds. I think 35 to 40. I've jotted it down there so I'd remember. And then for the clutch, it's going to be, I think it was like 17, 12 to, I can't hardly read my writing. I'll have to double check that. 12 to 17, something like that. So we'll get the clutch on next, get that aligned. Oh, and we got to make sure we put a throwout bearing in there, a bushing, I should say, or we'll be tearing this thing back apart real fast. And the clutch is on. So just used a old input shaft to make my alignment tool. So that is perfect. So that end of it is ready. We're going to put the bell housing onto the engine next, and then probably try to get a few of the linkages and stuff all a little more set. So, and then it's getting close to going back in. All right, with the clutch all torqued now as well to 17 foot-pounds, I've decided that I'm going to take a moment, strip everything off this motor, clean it up. It's in pretty clean condition already, and just give it a quick rattle can paint job just to make it look a little bit better. Plus, I do hate working with greasy stuff. So let's get it blown apart. One thing I noticed on this motor that it also had that I never liked was this weird dipstick tube. But it looks like I can pull it, so I'm gonna try to yank that out. And then I'll tap it back in lightly to paint, and then pull it out and put a real one in, because I don't have the dipstick. If I had a dipstick, I would leave it, but it did not come with one. Time to let it soak with a little bit of degreaser on it. Then we'll get it all wiped back down, blown off. Next time you see it, it's gonna be paint. What color do you think? I was just getting ready to finalize some of my prep for paint, and I decided I don't want to paint the hoses. So I pulled the hose off. Wow, am I glad I did. I don't know exactly, but that baby is going to have to be flushed, and there was gunk in the hose. Something had went in there and made a nest. So, boy, always a good thing to double check, especially when these motors have sat a while. Paint is done, and pretty much everything is put back on. Got the oil lines done, alternator back on. I'm using the same coil and distributor that was on this one. I did go ahead and put a gear reduction starter on that I had. And let's see, painted the bell housing. Got that looking, I think, pretty decent. And then just made sure some of my linkages were right. I still have to do the carburetor, but I didn't want to have that on to put it back in the Jeep, just to save a little bit of room for the cherry picker. So there it is. Now it's time to put it back. See, we are very close to going into the clutch. Need to just come back up just a little bit. I had pretty much given up on the fact that it was just going to slide together easily, and then of course it slid together easily. So I apologize, did not get that on film. But we'll go up here. I'll give you kind of a little hint what I did. I just kind of had this old piece of oak, stuck it between the pulley, and just kind of gave it a little push like that. I believe it's all the way seated. I did put one motor mount in just so that it sat down about where it needed to be. So now that that's pretty close, I'll see if I can kind of rotate it down and see what we can do. Okay, so everything is nice and tight together. That's done. Let's see, got my motor mount there, finished, but ran into a problem on this side. Now remember, I said this engine was kind of different in a lot of different ways. There is the engine mount. I'm guessing this is out of a truck or out of a wagon. That is where that engine is sitting nice and comfortably. It's sitting on its own. So it's definitely off. So I'm going to make, you can see there and there how much it's off. So just gonna make a little bracket that's gonna go back and land on the factory mount. I'm not gonna mess with anything today. I don't have the time. So here is my offset motor mount bracket. Basically 2 pieces of angle iron, welded them together. Got a couple of holes. We'll see how it looks. So there it is. Pretty basic, but I think it'll function just fine. So I'm getting all the clutch stuff hooked back together, but the spring pulls that back just enough, and I got the little arm in. I got to get that round ball. So I took a little magnet, and that's all it takes is just a little bit to hold that engaged that way. Now hopefully I can get down there and pry that into place. Genius! All right, before we did anything else, I went ahead and I disconnected the alternator. And the reason is one of the viewers, Mark, thank you, Mark, threw in the comments about using an amp gauge with an alternator, and my amp gauge was not sized correctly for the output of this alternator. So went ahead and disconnected that. Let's get back to firing this thing up. All right, here we go. Scared me a little bit. All right, I'm gonna mess around with this, get it going a little bit better, and see if I can find that exhaust leak because it's kind of loud underneath. As you can see, I had an oil leak, so I got good oil pressure. It was spraying out of my canister real good, so I did just put a new oil filter in this. So maybe the little gasket was not quite in place all the way. Let's take a look. So it was not leaking out of the top here. It was leaking out of the seal for the top. Yep, it was definitely had a little bit kinked. There we go. So hopefully this time I can get it in there without. So yeah, that thing's got to sit in there nice and flat. I had it just a little off. I'm guessing it moved a little bit when I did this right here. Hopefully we got it this time. I probably lost half a quart of oil already on the floor because I was on that side messing around with it, not on the side where I should have been. Okay, there we go. I didn't want to over tighten it. Let's try it again. Okay, so we got to do a few adjustments, but at least the oil leak is fixed now. I was only able to keep the engine running by hand choking it. Usually that means there's something up in the carburetor, and so I went ahead and pulled the top off, and the bowl has almost no gas in it. What's in there is pretty scuzzy old stuff, so I'm just going to kind of clean this up, take out my little needle and seat and clean that so I make sure that I got fuel coming in. We'll put it back together and try it again. Okay, went through and kind of set the timing, and actually it fired right up, so that is good news. Gonna try to set the timing a little closer now once it warms up. We'll see how it does. Well, the temperature hasn't come up yet, but the oil pressure is real good. Of course, we got nothing here because I disconnected it. And hey, actually our gauge is working. That's great. Last couple of things, because we changed from an L head to an F head, we got to change the pedal because they have different linkage. You can maybe see there is for an L head, and that is what goes on an F head. I get the pedal changed out, and then I just want to adjust that clutch, just get that throwout bearing just a little bit back further. It seems like it's okay, but it is spinning a little bit, and I'd like to just see that not spin. All right, we got an original air cleaner in and everything hooked back up. Oh, probably better take that rag out of there. Let's see how it does. Okay, it currently sounds like a tractor with that old muffler on it. So I'm gonna see about getting a different muffler, do a couple little things to some linkage so I can get it to idle down a little bit. But I think it's gonna make it. It starts, it stops, it runs down the road pretty nicely. And all the lights work. Obviously I don't have turn signals up front yet, but the brake lights work, the rear turn signals work. It's got seats. It's kind of got a windshield, and I've even got a spare. So Patches the Jeep is ready to go, and we're gonna leave it up to my wife which Jeep we take. It's either gonna be Patches or will it be our beloved Brownie? Check back to see which one we take. Thanks for watching.